Alright, welcome everyone. I'm gonna go super late tonight, but we have a couple of guests tomorrow, unless they've forgotten, which is always a possibility, and I always welcome more sleep, but I don't think we'll have such luck tomorrow, hopefully. But we're going to be looking at some articles on the state of canvassing in 2022. We may look at some other things, we'll see how long that takes. And then afterwards, if we're not completely destroyed, it appears as if Infrared went to a MAGA rally recently, and I'm a little morbidly curious. So we'll give that a glance. But that's tonight. Alright. Well, without further ado. So this is a website I'm not familiar with, whystatesmatter.sisterdistrict.com. This was sent to me by a friend of the channel, Brooks. And this is on specifically phone banking, which, especially after COVID, is probably one of the principal means by which people canvass now, just because it doesn't require in-person contact. And of course, for the last little bit, if you attempted in-person contact, that was sort of frowned upon in most places until fairly recently, and it still is in some. Let's turn the music down a little bit. Let's put on something a little bit more backgroundy. There we are. Oh god, that's awful. Let's do this one. That'll do. Alright, so this is by Gabby Goldstein. A lot of folks are curious if phone banking is worth the energy, particularly compared to postcarding, which is somewhat easier and sometimes more fun. Here's the bottom line. Phone banking is worth the energy, and we've got to do it. It's not always the most fun, but as Obama said recently, we shouldn't expect politics to be entertaining at all times. Sometimes you were just in a church basement making phone calls and eating cold pizza. That actually doesn't sound terribly unfun, to be totally honest. It's not the worst job I would have had. And then they have a list here, which I believe is a breakdown of what we're seeing here, which is phone banking is worth it, and this is a more systematic breakdown of the advantages of phone banking vis-a-vis, or I guess as compared to postcarding. So here's some background on how campaigns build their universe of voters in the district who they want to eventually turn out to vote for their candidate. When a campaign starts up, it requests access to VAN. To figure out what that is, to VAN from the State Democratic Party. VAN is a big database of people who live in the district, or at least who lived there at the time of the last election. So that's interesting. So who lived at the time of the last? So it must be a registry of past votes. VAN has information about how frequently those folks voted in the past and in which party's primary elections they previously voted. That's interesting. Oh, I see. In which elections they voted, not who they voted for. It is the campaign's job to then take that big mess of data and figure out which people still even live in the district. This is called cleaning the list, and which people, the campaign should target for which purposes. This is the process of identifying voters. VAN isn't always up to date because a lot of the data in VAN is from the last election. Not everyone who lived in the district a couple of years ago will be there now. And since voters do not register by party affiliation in some states, for example Virginia, VAN might not have this info ready to go either. So the list needs to be cleaned, quote unquote. And aside from knocking on people's doors, the best way to do this is by calling them on the phone. As the lists are clean, campaigns will start by determining which people have a very high likelihood to vote for the candidate already, their base, who probably don't need too much attention from the campaign. Campaigns will frequently reach out to these folks as potential campaign volunteers. The campaign then determines two different segments of voters: those who need to be persuaded, consistent voters who may vote for either party's candidate, and those who need to be mobilized, voters who generally will vote for a Democrat but who don't always vote. Those folks will need to be persuaded to vote for the candidate or convinced to turn out through canvassing, phone banking, and other live conversations. These pools of potential targets make up the campaign's quote-unquote voter universe. By segmenting people into these categories, campaigns can best allocate their time and resources to win their votes. So interesting, actually, sort of what we were doing with the mapping the terrain stream did a little while ago. But again, campaigns can only do this to the extent that they have cleaned their lists and identified and categorized those potential voters. Remember, a campaign doesn't just get a list of categorized voters who are sure to live in the district from the state party or from anyone else. Each campaign has to build and clean their own list themselves. Phone banking is a key mechanism to clean lists. So phone banking has a really important purpose way ahead of calling folks to get out to vote. Phone banking is a key mechanism to clean lists, figure out who still lives there, and to identify and categorize voters into base, persuadables, and mobilizations. That's very interesting. So canvassing, we typically tend to think of it as just a tool for proselytizing, right? Or for like awakening a voter base that you already know exists. But it seems like a major function of it is actually intelligence gathering. I hadn't thought of that. The eventual product of this process is the list that serves as the GOTV universe. I feel like I missed what GOTV, get out to vote universe, I guess. In other words, just those folks that the campaign wants to try to get to the polls. Yes, get out to vote universe. Phone banking is, along with canvassing, the only real way to clean lists and prepare that GOTV universe list, so phone banking is extremely important. It's worth restating that if we don't help those phone bank dials, they might not get done at all. And those are important voter IDs that may just go totally undiscovered for the campaign. The lists may just remain quote-unquote dirty at the end of the campaign heading into GOTV, and that will hinder our campaigns too, in terms of not knowing everyone they should focus on turning out. Keep in mind that, typically in a midterm year, the state party's responsibility is to turn out the base during GOTV. It's up to each individual campaign to turn out its mobilization and persuadable categories. If those IDs haven't been made by state legislative campaigns themselves through canvassing and phone banking, the campaign will have flawed persuadables and mobilization lists, and as we all know, shout out to Shelley Simons, I don't know who that is, missing out on even a few votes can be the difference between winning and losing at the state leg level. So, live phone banking works to turn out the vote at scale. So what they say here is big value in phone banking at scale across tens of thousands of dials. At a small scale, it can seem ineffective, but at scale, it's pretty effective. So you need a lot of phone bankers for it to make a difference, which, you know, makes sense, again, because it seems like a large portion of its function is intelligence gathering. It's not just the in-person conversations that get people out to vote. It's also figuring out for the next election who is there. Robocalls have been shown to be basically worthless and even harmful. Okay, let's look at this. That's interesting. But we can't read it because it's dead. That's unfortunate. God, I wish we had that one. Well, I'll look into it. I'm sure we have another article of that sort. I've got a fair list of articles here. Canvassing is still king at increasing. Okay, I see. So phone calls by real people increase turnout by approximately 2 to 3%, which isn't actually negligible. Some elections are won by a couple percentage points. Canvassing is still king at increasing turnout by approximately 4.3 to 4.8% of voters who answer the door. But phone banking is still pretty darn good in the aggregate scale. So I mean, collectively, it can change increasing turnout by between 4 and 5% roughly, to take a little bit off the top, and 6 or 7%, which is nothing at all. That can be vote determining, or election determining rather. But phone banking is still pretty darn good in the aggregate scale. in the aggregate at scale. P.S. Check out our research about the relative efficacy of different types of voter contact methods. Ooh, is this one dead? Please don't be a dead link. Please don't be a dead link. Please, work. Live, child. This isn't doing anything. Come on. Okay, let's just try copying it. I think it worked. Oh, wait. Here we go, voting research. Activism in the age of COVID-19. Okay, this will be useful to look at. Where's the, Okay, let's open this in a new tab. I guess we'll primarily be looking at this source today. This seems like a pretty useful thing. Here, let me pull up chat. I need to remember to do that. You go off for a week and you forget your whole system. Check stream notes. Oh, this is the broken link, okay. Field experiments on voter mobilization and overview of a burgeoning literature, okay. Oh, here we go. Do robotic calls from credible sources influence voter turnout or voter choice? Okay, good. So I think this is actually... This is from... this is fairly old, though. This is from 2012, but we can... It might have some useful data. Okay. Alright, so the state of robocalls in 2022. For as long as there have been ways to make money over the phone, robocalls have existed. Let's see. Where the problem lies in the fact that the automated calls of today are typically a scam for unsuspecting individuals, issuing hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for illegal robocalls. Okay, these are safeguards against scams. Stir Shaken is an industry standard caller ID authentication technology. The FCC requires that all service providers adhere to the set of protocols to better shield customers. Okay. Who makes robocalls? Top 50 robocallers in the US, December 2021. Robocalls are a big waste of time for everyone. 18% of unidentified calls get answered. 9% of calls identified as spam get answered. Spam typically lasts 45 seconds, which is low compared to identified calls from businesses, which last 2 minutes and 58 seconds on average. Spammers wasted a total of 651,176 minutes in 2020. That's less than I would have thought, to be honest. I'm not seeing a lot of information here that actually shows that robocalls are useless for politics. But I suppose the main thing is robocalls are largely going to be blocked. And postcarding, I assume, is just mailing out, like literally postcards, encouraging people to vote, or just going door to door and dropping them into mailboxes. Okay, just here's some studies. Volunteer phone calls can increase turnout. Activism in the age of COVID. Okay, so what did they do? This survey asked sister district volunteers to answer questions about their involvement in sister district, their feelings, Okay, it's just a survey of their experiences, which is fine. It's more or less what we'll be doing tomorrow when we talk to our guests. Oh, I have a second monitor coming in, guys. We'll be good. What am I looking at here? Oh no, I know he posted the study. I've got this study up. It's right here. Field experiments on voter mobilization. I'm going to look at this in a few minutes. I'm just looking at this first. Okay, so key descriptive findings. Volunteers plan to be more involved in... Okay, here we go. Volunteers plan to be more involved in 2020 than they were in 2019 or 2018. This is not helpful. Yeah, this is just, they're just puffing themselves up with this article. That's frustrating. Okay, let's look at this one. So although several important experiments address political phenomena other than voter turnout, let me see if this thing is actually centered on the screen. There we go. So although several important experiments address political phenomena other than voter participation, the literature measuring the effect of various interventions on voter turnout is the largest and most fully developed. It provides a good illustration of how the use of field experiments in political science has proceeded, the end of the sentence. From an initial focus on the relative effects of different modes of communication, scholars began to explore how theoretical insights from social psychology and behavioral economics might be used to craft messages and how voter mobilization experiments could be employed to test the real-world effects of theoretical claims. The existence of a large number of experimental turnout studies was essential because it provided the background, yada yada yada. Okay, we're not going to go through all of this. Okay, here we go. Modes of contact. The New Haven 1998 study examined the relative effectiveness of 3 common campaign tactics: door-to-door canvassing, calls from commercial phone banks, and direct mail. The study found that face-to-face canvassing produced an 8 percentage point increase in turnout among those contacted. Each piece of mail raised turned by half a percentage point in households receiving the mail. A phone call, by contrast, produced no increase in turnout. So that's contrary to the sister state's number, which suggests almost a 5% increase, which would be substantial. But canvassing across the board is effective. More effective in this one. Canvassing studies. Basic questions of generalizability abounded. Would canvassing work elsewhere? Baseline turnout rates in the control groups. In a 2001 multi-site evaluation carried out in 6 cities: Bridgeport, Columbus, Detroit, Minneapolis, Raleigh, how do you pronounce that? And St. Paul. Baseline turnout rates in the control groups varied considerably across sites, from 8.2% to 43%. Despite the varying electoral and demographic contexts, the results were no more variable than one would expect by chance. In all 6 sites, turnout was higher in the assigned treatment group than the control group, although the increase was negligible in one site. Analyzing data for the 6 sites with a single regression model yielded an effect of 7.1 percentage points with a standard error of 2.2 percentage points. So back to 5% roughly. Another experiment conducted in 2001, and they found, which showed how it worked in a rural setting. And the canvassing effort achieved a 75% contact rate. Scripts were not significantly different. Regardless of the message used, the team of Latino canvassers proved highly effective at mobilizing Latino voters. Latino turnout increased from 13.8% to 18.5%. For non-Latinos, it increased from 25.7% to 28.2%. Okay, so I guess who the canvassers are makes a difference. Of course it would. Now we're looking at phone banks again. Okay, so effect of different messaging. This is a very overwritten study. Canvassing is effective, phone banking is the most efficient. One of the most interesting findings from the GeoTV research in the US and UK is that voter mobilization campaigns have enduring effects. The New Haven residents who were randomly assigned to receive direct mail or face-to-face canvassing in 1998 were more likely to vote in both the election held in November 1998 and the mayoral election held in November 1999. This type of persistent effect has been replicated repeatedly. For example, voters assigned to receive mailings in the Michigan social pressure experiment not only voted at higher rates in the 2006 August primary, they were also significantly more likely to vote in August primaries in 2008, 2010, and 2012. The self-mailing generated approximately 1,850 votes in August 2006, plus an additional 900 votes over the next 3 August primaries. So it increased itself by almost 50%. So the general takeaway from this, and I'll have to go over this more in depth later, this is a very long article, is that canvassing can't be treated as a thing that fails in the initial attempt. It's something that increases efficacy with repetition. So when you have the same concerted canvassing effort in the same place, you get more and more votes from that area with each successive cycle, I guess. Ral-E, okay, thank you for that. Yeah, 8% is very big. Dear God, if this isn't the driest subject. Oh boy. It's okay, we'll have infrared stuff to look at soon. So, the general thrust of this is canvassing affects voter turnouts very effectively. Phone banking is also effective, but much less so. However, again, as Brooke stated, it's much more efficient. You don't require people to go door to door. You can go to more houses that way. The consensus seems to be that robocalls don't accomplish anything. Their study on activism during COVID was not great. They seem to just be pumping themselves up and saying like, hey, people are really raring to go despite the pandemic, which I don't care. What I want to know is, and we'll talk about this with our guests tomorrow, what I want to know is, when you're going door to door, are you, or when you're organizing, are you experiencing much higher attrition rates? Are you being treated with markedly more hostility or difficulty when you're meeting people at the door? Are you finding that, well, I suppose we don't have numbers for this yet. Well, we might by now. I'd be curious to know if the efficacy of repeat canvassing is being affected at all by this. That would be interesting to know. Is pee stored in the balls? Of course it is. What do you think they're for? Thank you for that. Alright. What is this? We examine the relationship between inheritance rules and voter turnout. Inheritance rules are measured by entailed farms in South Tyrrell, land properties using... This could be interesting for other reasons, but I don't think we're going to have time to go over this tonight. Alright, what time is it? We've been going for about half an hour. So I think... Oh, that's a dense study. I'll have to go over this one myself at some point. But, I'm fairly satisfied for tonight. Hello, Institute for Internet Research, how are you? Well... Suppose that's it for the sane stuff tonight. Let's look at the insane stuff. And thank you, Brooks, for these resources. These will come in handy. Alright. Infrared goes to MAGA rally. That's what we're looking at now. Okay. This is where we're at as a species. Still less annoying than bad empanada. Okay, so this is infrared attending a Trump rally, I suppose. So this will be a thing.
Came across you with the trending hashtag MAGA communism.
And Matt brought this up the other day, and I thought it was like a half joke. The idea of MAGA communism.
Okay, buddy, let's see a demonstration. Why don't you go to a MAGA or Republican rally and try to convince the people who attend these events that communism is good on camera?
If you're afraid of organizing socially conservative people or Trump voters in class struggle, what you're really arguing is that you have zero faith in your organizational capacity to educate or advance people's social consciousness. Yeah. For one thing, socially conservative people aren't of the same class. Secondly, being socially conservative doesn't make them working class, and in many cases, being conservative makes them very much not working class, and in fact, quite anti-working class. So this is who the hell is Steven Estrada? I don't know who any of these people are.
I would love to see how it goes. The MAGA communism thing has to be the funniest fucking thing yet to develop in the past hoax. Imagine any of them saying MAGA communism to an actual Trump supporter at a Trump rally.
Hang on, we need to set something up for this. All right.
Real life. Like, hello, they'll be treated like fucking freaks. Which I mean, they are.
People on Twitter and people all over social media clearly have a wrong view about MAGA people and the Trump constituency. So let's get right into it. So I've got to ask you, because the media has been saying this, so are you a hateful, fascist, racist bigot?
No, sir.
Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Because see.
They all say that I'm an enemy of the country. I am not. I am loving. I'm honest.
And you know that's the atmosphere that's the only atmosphere we get here, is that it's such a loving.
Well, we've been here all day.
Recently we saw a railroad strike. I don't know if you heard of it. They used power to come together to stop. That's an immense level of power that hasn't been tapped into yet.
It should happen. You know, I've said this for many, many years. This country is on the path to another revolution. We walked away from King George because of taxes, right? Where are our taxes right now?
So imagine, to stop this agenda they're pushing, if the MAGA people and the railway workers united to, you know, bring the government back to the people.
That would be great if everybody could get together and get on the same page.
What the fuck is he talking? Hang on. Is there context in here? The hashtag MAGA communism trended for nearly the entire month of September on Twitter. The responses were amusing to say the least. Both leftists and some elements... I haven't seen that. I'm pretty sure it's a lie. Both leftists and some elements of the far right swore up and down that the notion was patently absurd, terminally online nonsense. How could MAGA supporters come around to agreeing with communistic ideas? Some even claimed that going to a MAGA rally while talking about MAGA communism would get you severely beaten. For some reason, these ideologists had a vested interest in preventing what would otherwise be a natural alliance between the insurgent, populist, and primarily working-class MAGA movement and the ideas of communism. I decided to put all their claims to the test. If the leftist and anime rightists Enemy rightist ideologist for right. I'm gonna have to figure out what that means at some point. If the leftist and enemy rightist ideologist for right, then mere mention of the word MAGA communism would guarantee to land me in the hospital by the end of the night. MAGA people could not possibly agree with communist ideas like the proletarian dictatorship and elements of the 10 planks of the manifesto, like nationalizing strategic sectors of the economy. What year is this? Why are we talking about freaking railways?
What if the railway strikers came together with the MAGA people to stop this agenda, to stop the Green New Deal, and to stop the Wall Street and the City of London ruling class from imposing their Great Reset on us?
Well, that needs to happen no matter what.
So the working class needs to come together, use their power, just like the railway strikers, and when
Not the power. That's right.
the American
Is there a railway strike going on? Hang on. Railway strike. Okay, where is this thing? Where's this taking place? He went to... Where'd he go? Where is this? Does he say where this is? Where is this? Okay, railway strike, MAGA rally. Okay, here we go. The story behind the averted rail strike is about employers and exploitation. And oh, it's freaking paid article. What else do we have? Here we go. White House weighs emergency decree to keep vital goods on rails if there's a strike. Close to 125,000 workers, I assume, could strike if no deal reached. Stoppage would hit weeks for the November midterm elections. So I guess there's a planned freight strike. Close to 125,000 railroad workers are prepared to walk off the job at the end of the week if companies don't reach agreements with all the labor groups negotiating contracts now, raising the specter of a complete shutdown of the U.S. rail system. I see. The unraveling talks have already trapped critical supplies of some highly hazardous chemicals at rail terminals that industrial plants use to make fertilizers needed by farmers across the U.S. and the world. Could cause a wide range of supply chains to seize up and eventually lead to more food shortages. Senate Republicans introduced a resolution to force the unions to accept the Presidential Emergency Board's recommendations if a resolution is not reached by Friday. What's the reason for the strike exactly? I'm not seeing an explanation. Here we go. Maybe this will explain it. Yeah. Steal my data. Oh, for God's sake, really? These freaking greedy news sites. Okay, looming rail. Oh my god. Why is... Guys, people give this stuff out for free. No one's paying you. God damn it, going to Reddit. Anyways, moving on. There's a labor strike with the rail workers, apparently. Okay.
Country.
That's right. We're the 99%. And all we have to do is stand up and it's game over for the 1%. Exactly. That's right.
It seems like our government has become completely controlled by this minority of Wall Street and City of London globalists. What do you think about a government by, for, and of the American working class instead?
I'm all for the people.
Do you feel like our government is owned by big business?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Don't you think that they're screwing over the little guy and they're screwing over the working class to help Wall Street and help the big bankers?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's establishment, there's, people in power that are, trying to set things up for themselves, and none of it's working out for us.
The people need to rise up. But the other thing people need to do is we need to work on campaign.
What was that cut? The people need to rise up. The other thing people need to do. What was that?
Finance reform. We can't have these big corporations
What did he say that they
putting
had
in
to
all
cut?
these dollars into the campaigns because these politicians will listen to their big donors. So we need campaign finance reform.
God, look at Haas's eyes. This guy said something crazy and he's wanting to run. He's making him look how uncomfortable he looks. Oh God, like just this face. This is the face of a man who has made a terrible mistake.
As well as term limitations. But if you don't do campaign finance reform, term limitations is going to be a moot point because the big corporations will just rent those seats and keep putting their people in.
You're speaking to a man that's got Democrat votes from the 70s, drop torch.
So the
10 years, independent heart, when they brought in NAFTA, you talk about the working man. When they brought that in, that's when I jumped on the parole bandwagon. Well, now it happens to be Clinton brought NAFTA in anyway. Now it happens to be Trump is sporting the same sign in my truck, hire American, buy American. Okay, I did the same thing in the 70s, and I was a Democrat.
We need a...
So things have flip-flopped, that's all.
The Democrats and the left have betrayed the working class.
So have the Republicans that go to the left. It's
the rhinos.
How do you look at it?
What does that mean, so of the Republicans? Why do all these people look the same? Have you noticed?
America. Is it a two-party system, a three-party system?
Seems like a one-party system to me.
It does.
What do you think about the need for Americans to have a government by, for, and of the working class?
It was our whole foundation from the beginning. That's what it was intended to be.
Don't you think our economy should serve the purpose of building instead of just profits?
Absolutely, absolutely.
These banks have everyone, we've got truckers in debt, they can't even...
All they want is a filthy rich and filthy poor.
Oh, they're just trying to burn the country down. That's my take on it. If they can divide it and burn it down, then...
Oh my God, look at this suit.
Few people that have the well-to-do ones, they'll be just fine, but it's all the other little people in the world that'll lose everything.
The Democrats are always saying...
Look at his eyes. Like, look at Haas here. It's just like, wow. I am in hell. That's what that face says. I am doomed to spend the rest of my days in a madhouse. You almost gotta feel bad for him.
Lose everything.
The Democrats are always saying that they're out here to fight against, but the Democrats are the ones who are controlled by big money and the big bankers. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think as the big bankers and the Hollywood liberal types, the perks from the Democrat Party. Now, our gubernatorial candidate, Tudor Dixon, is being outspent almost 10-1.
I can't tell you who they are, but they don't celebrate Christmas.
I mean, Gretchen Whitmer's got about $15 million on the bank, and Tudor right now has got about $4 million. So, and it's about the same across the line. So we're getting a lot of outside money from big bankers, and
This guy has almost as much hair as Haas does.
And Hollywood, because they are getting the perks from the far left liberal part of the party, of their party, the Democrat Party.
We need a government by, for, and of the American working class that promotes common prosperity, not the interests of the rentier and financial big bankers.
You're absolutely right and everything.
And if
Is there anyone here who's like under the age of 60? Like everyone at this rally is like,
you know, if we had here in America, if we promoted economic development at the forefront, jobs, prosperity, and wealth for Americans, all Americans first, and instead of just doing it for Wall Street and the bankers and big money, you know, I think the working class of this country needs to take back their government. We need a government for the working class.
People that we hire, that we vote into office, yes.
I think farmers are the most underrated Americans.
So basically, Bill Gates...
Oh my god, look, there's actually somebody there who's not geriatric in the background. Okay, they do exist.
Gates has been buying up all the farmland, and it seems like our farmland is open season for all of these, you know, big businesses and all these billionaire globalists who earn their money by leeching off of us, not through hard work, through real industry. So what we want to do is we want a government by, for, and of the American working class. What do you think?
Well, that's a definite. Right now, you've got all this, these, what are they, the GMO seeds or whatever that don't raise any other seeds. So now they're dictating what you can grow, how you can grow, all that stuff. That's not right.
So the big farmers, the big corporations are driving out the small farmers, basically.
Pretty much.
And we need a government by, for, and of the American working class, not the bankers and not the...
Right, there's too many, like I say, there's a few big people that got lots of money, and that's okay, but when they start trying to burn the rest of the country down.
When they try to own the rest of us and exploit the whole country.
Right, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, we need a...
Okay, I think we get the idea. This is pain. Let's see if there's something more substantive. And I say that in a very caring way. What have we got here? This is from October 7. I thought he was streaming tonight. Let's find out. Nope. Not seeing anything. The Eurasian Revolution. Oh god. It's happened already, apparently. The hell is this?
This is the response. Okay, ready? I'm gonna wait for this donation to go through. Descended into collective, you know, you're never gonna win anyone over. Oh my god, they'll never be open to you. They're gonna punch you in the face. They're gonna get so offended. You'll never be able to win over the MAGA people. It'll be impossible. And I literally just went and did it. They'll go to a MAGA rally and talk that talk. Okay, I literally did that, right? So I went to bed and I'm like, okay, how are they going to respond to this? Like, this literally, this destroys the left, pretty much. I already said that, right? I already talked about that. It destroys them. But I've never seen a community online that has so easily descended into collective psychosis to the point where it's like, really? Are you really going to die on this hill? Is everyone in on this little cope here? Like, not one person has any self-awareness about how fucking pathetic this looks? Does no one have self-awareness about how fucking pathetic it looks that this is the response? So check it out. You have to see it to believe it. Of all the things, by the way, of all the things, right? Of all the things to cope with, this is what they do. And you have to see it to believe it, because this is,
Okay, well,
I mean, I know it has to be botted, right? But
where'd you get this suit jacket?
3,500 likes of attacking my jacket. 3,500 likes attacking my jacket. Really? I mean,
it's kind of a weird jacket.
That means 3,500 people voluntarily did the following. I mean, they voluntarily admitted that they're coping. Like, 3,500 people have, not one person has the self-awareness to be ashamed about what a pathetic response this is. This is the best they have. This was literally their response. You couldn't have made it up. I think we tried to make fun of it yesterday. Like, oh yeah, Haas, they're probably just going to like make fun of your shirt, or they're going to make fun of your pants or something. Like, absolutely desperate, bottom of the barrel shit. And this is what they fucking decided. So to me, this looks like an indisputable W on my part.
I mean, it looked like you talked to a bunch of confused old people and said, like, hey, do you want the working class to rise up against the bankers? And they all just kind of said, yeah, sure, GMOs. And then you just kind of awkwardly shuffled off because there was no substantive conversation there and nothing that actually links any of your political positions, such as they are, with what they were doing. They all just left kind of confused, and they forgot your face as soon as they went home. So what they're making fun of is the irrelevance of this by pointing out the suit, because this doesn't merit any further attention. It's just kind of a joke.
I cannot believe that people are so desperate that they'll just humiliate themselves in this way and like pretend like, oh yeah, it's totally your shirt that I'm thinking about. Yeah, I don't feel owned at all, huh?
Yeah, okay. I get the idea. So you said anything substantive recently? Styx Hexenhammer 666 is clueless. What? Oh, well, this is interesting. This might actually be a thing.
For those of you unfamiliar, the MAGA communist movement is starting to take the internet by storm. It's starting to take Twitter by storm because it's been trending for like the past 3 days. And in a curious mind, that would provoke a lot of questions. MAGA and communism combining?
3 days. Vosh has been trending for the past year.
Seems anachronistic. But the problem is that not everyone has a curious mind. Not everyone is just willing to sit down and humble themselves and ask questions like, maybe there's something here I don't already know. Let's face it, people love their echo chambers. But despite all the independent thinkers and all these independent-minded political influencers, this country still has yet to have an independent political third party or political force in general. And the ideological gatekeepers like Styx Hexenhammer benefit from that fact. They benefit from the fact that entire audiences get to be pigeonholed into these either leftist or right-wing focus groups that are a sure and guaranteed source of building their own brands. They don't have to risk exploring new ideas because doing that would fall under the risk of offending people you didn't know you were going to offend before. For nearly half a decade.
I mean, but you're doing the same thing. You're just kind of like a forming aneurysm off the main artery of the political right, which is what you are.
These political content creators have created entire personas and brands based off of fringe political ideologies with no results to show for it. At the end of the day, American politics is still 100% controlled by the same globalist elites. We, those of us on the bottom...
You know, if you look very closely, it's faint, but you can sort of see it. He almost has a bit of a Hitler stash going there in the middle, doesn't he? It's like darker right there, right in the center. Maybe we better be looking out.
Have no say in any of it. So you could see why these influencers like Styx Hexenhammer want and have a vested interest in trying to prevent the coming and inevitable political realignment that the American masses are starting to wake up to. A political realignment which is going to shift from the typical leftist versus rightist dichotomy to a dichotomy between those who are on the bottom and those who are on the top. Now, recently, Styx made a video titled, "No, MAGA Communism Does Not Exist," where he basically went on this 9-minute spiel, basically vomiting out his complete ignorance and prejudice about the ideas of communism. And fair enough, maybe he genuinely is uneducated. And I want him to give him a chance to prove that, right? So I sent people to ask him to debate me about it. Let's have a debate or a discussion where you can give me the opportunity to explain where I'm coming from as the originator of the MAGA communist meme, at least from the very beginning. And that way, you know, I can give you the benefit of the doubt because I don't like to just antagonize people for no reason. But for someone who dedicated a 9-minute video to debunking a ideology or a movement that originated in this community, Styx has shown an unwillingness to engage with the actual thinking that's behind it. He said in a really dismissive and arrogant way that he's not going to debate me because I don't have enough clout, because he has 500,000 subscribers and I only have 20,000. Well, clearly the meme had enough clout for you to make a video about it. And I imagine you're going to be having to make more videos about this topic because MAGA communism isn't going anywhere. We are full steam ahead.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Haas. Kill me, it's happened.
And it's only growing. We're getting a lot of people in our ranks, a lot of people interested in the ideas, a lot of people fully on board with the initiative and the idea. So I may not have enough clout, Styx, but clearly my influence has a far greater reach than you're willing to accept. With that being said, since...
So the crowning achievement for Haas this year is he got a weird sort of Sargon orbiter has-been to acknowledge a video of his, and he had awkward, stilted conversations with random old people at a Trump rally. And supposedly, although I haven't seen this, MAGA communism was trending on Twitter for 3 days. 3 days.
Since he won't debate me, he leaves me no choice but to absolutely BTFO his dumb little 9-minute video about why MAGA communism doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Let's begin.
BTFO.
All right, everyone, there's some astroturfing going on and a little bit of economic gaslighting, I suppose. The other day, communists were trying to get MAGA communism trending, and I can't believe that I have to actually explain why this is a poor idea and can't possibly work. And there was a Substack fucking article on RCP that was trying to explain how actually it made sense, and I'd like to debunk a few things here. No, MAGA communism cannot exist and does not exist. It's a co-opting attempt by the far left on MAGA, and it's...
So first of all, you're wrong right off the bat. This isn't a co-opting by the far left, at least if you're going to define that based on its reality. We aren't part of the American left in any capacity. So where would we even be coming from to co-opt the MAGA?
Indeed. Indeed, Haas, that's the problem. You're not coming from the political left at all. You're coming from... You're literally just them looping about to put a communist beret on your head that you bought from a dime store to then go pretend you're distinct from the MAGA people, but you're not. You have nothing to offer that's new. You're hedging your bets on being able to sell yourself as something that they should be interested in, but the only upshot of this will be they will carry on doing exactly what they were doing, and they'll occasionally click on you while they're doing it. And that's it. That's it.
MAGA movement to begin with. Many of the infrared community members actually have family who are MAGA. They actually live in MAGA counties and MAGA communities. And they're just as much entitled to being part of the MAGA movement as anyone else. Sticks, you're like this Luciferian pagan Satanist. You have nothing in common with the average MAGA supporter and MAGA person, most of whom are devout Christians and people of faith. So where the hell are you coming from with this gatekeeping about how we have to be co-opting the MAGA movement to be pushing new ideas within it?
Pagans are not people of faith, of course, because faith is for the goodies, and he's a Satanist, because that's how that works. He's basically like a YouTube Sith, right?
To make MAGA look like it's frenetic and insane by associating it with communism, which, you know, the vast majority of humans in this world understand is not a working system. It's failed.
Okay, well, first of all, I can grant you the fact that most Americans are hostile to communism, so it might seem like this is like a Democrat astroturfing attempt to discredit MAGA. But the truth is, the MAGA communism meme is twofold.
The truth is, I couldn't get the Dems to pay me to do it.
On one hand, we actually think communism is what's going to turbocharge the MAGA movement into a powerhouse of the American working class, which we think is the only path to resisting and defeating the globalists. And on the other hand, it's also an attempt to educate people who are knee-deep in all these Cold War prejudices about what communism is into ideas they haven't been exposed to before.
It's a utopian ideology like some others, and it's non-working. There is never going to be a successful implementation of anything resembling communism. It's been tried over and over for a century now. It always fails and usually leads to genocides. This is the inevitable end result of...
Okay, I'm actually interested in how he replies to this, because this is a frequent line that you hear.
Okay, so A, communism is the exact opposite of a utopian ideology. You'd know that if you actually read communist literature. Secondly...
The short one, by the way.
Communism has worked almost every single time, at least in the major countries within which it was implemented. It worked in China, and it worked in the Soviet Union. The question is, what did it work for? Its goals were to basically create a primary industrial economic sphere, which is, mind you, something that the majority of countries today are unable to do, even with all of the IMF loans and subsidies they get from the...
Yeah, but the result was the destabilization of the entire country, the deaths of millions of people, and they folded in every single case and became basically kleptocracies.
The imperialist and globalist governments. So you have to bear in mind what the goals were. The goals weren't to give everyone iPhones and to create a completely luxurious society. The goal was pretty baseline, humble, and as far as those goals were concerned, they were able to achieve them. And even above and beyond that, China has proved that it can implement communism in a way that has all of the dynamism and all of the material wealth befitting and necessary for a people in the modern age.
Hang on, has he, like, talked about China at all? Let me see here quickly. Just take on China. Is he basically a dingist? Because he would be, right? Let's see. Debating leftists on China. This could actually be interesting. Okay, we're going to gonna make a 9-degree turn. Okay, do we have timestamps? Of course we don't. Here we go. Brilliant. Challenger 1, guy inquires into how China is socialist. Boom, bingo. That's what we want to see.
Let's add them. Go ahead. Why is China not socialist?
Let's first have your definitions. What do you think, or what do you define socialism as? Like in just bullet points.
How many points?
Bullet points.
Just bullet points, briefly.
Okay, I think a socialist mode of production establishes the purpose of production to not be based in the pursuit of profits, but to be based in the, pursuit of some form of, some social ends, basically. I know people weren't satisfied with that.
But you need profits. That's how you expand industry. Like you can't not have profits. Socialism isn't against profits, it's against exploitation. There's a difference there.
Definition before, but it's a mode of production that's based in production being based on the fulfillment of some kind of, politically or socially established goal, right? And that is not only it's not only that there's also social goals involved in production, it's that production itself is fundamentally based on that. Like it's not something on the side, it's ultimately what production is about, right? Another characteristic of socialism, I guess, if you want to define it this way, is it's an absence of the traditional form of private property that existed.
Pause. This is your entire brand. You don't have this ready to go, boom, 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 boom. What are you doing? You're playing the beer hall push game. Why do you not know your own platform? Backwards and forwards.
In the capitalism Marx described. And it's actually an absence in it's the absence of also any absolute form of private property whatsoever. So if there are forms of private property, they're more kind of either based on, I don't know how to pronounce it, usufruct or whatever the fuck it's called.
Usufruct.
Use, or it's based on personal ownership, right? So that is another characteristic of socialism. I think finally, the final characteristic of socialism is the commodity form no longer being truly universal, but rather determinate in some sense.
Okay, so here's village socialism. Can't speak. Village socialism. Like the kind that would take place in Slavic villages in rural Russia. Those would have usufruct, where usufruct is basically where you have there's a general understanding that you can use each other's property for productive ends, provided you don't destroy it, right? Like you maintain it in common, stuff like that. Communism in China did not work that way. You had the country divided into what were they called? It wasn't cadres, but they were I guess cantons, and you couldn't leave them. You were assigned to a specific zone, and you had to work that zone, and you had tickets as a result of your labor, in payment for your labor, that you could only use in this zone to buy food and necessities. I don't know how the hell is he going to say that modern China is socialist because it is he going to argue that modern China has a usufruct system?
Range of exchange is somehow restricted between the universal social goals of a state and some kind of, form of civil society, socialist civil society. So those are my 3 bullet points.
Great. So we'll go one by one. First is they shouldn't be motivated by profit.
God,
But from all the products that you see from China, they are highly competitive with others. So wouldn't that imply they're motivated by profits?
No, I think profits are ancillary. I think obviously I think that's why China is so competitive, is that profits are not ultimately in command in terms of the planning for the economy that happens at a larger scale. In order for, at the local level, profits to be so competitive. I think profits in China are used as a form of measurement of the success or failure or efficiency of a given enterprise. But when push comes to shove, the economy does not exist for profit. It's
I'm not even going to try to process this. I'm going to die.
just that profit is the primary form of measuring, but not the absolute form. It's just the primary form of measuring whether or not a given industry or a given enterprise is actually efficient. Is it getting more than it's putting in, right?
Okay, so one question is, would you agree that from almost all the products that are imported from China, like exported from China, sorry, to other countries, they actually, I mean, bomb the markets of other countries. They are so competitive in their like means of production and in the nature of expenses and so on, that none of the markets in other countries can actually compete with Chinese markets. So wouldn't that imply that they're not only motivated by profits, they're heavily motivated by profits, so much so that they would, I think, is someone speaking? Am I speaking over somebody?
No, continue.
No, you're hearing your own echo because you sound like you're speaking from the afterlife. Your microphone is so soft. Sounds like a nice person, though.
Sure. So wouldn't that imply just that type of hyper competition? Wouldn't that imply that there's some sort of that profit is more of a motivation than you're giving it credit for?
I don't think so, no. I think China's industrial and competitive edge actually speaks to the successes of its socialist system, and without which, the Chinese prices would not be competitive in the first place. So I don't think it's proof that profit is the motivation.
Hang on. What did he just say here? That was weird.
That imply that there's some sort of that profit is more of a motivation than you're giving it credit for?
I don't think so, no. I think China's industrial and competitive edge actually speaks to the successes of its socialist system, and without which, the Chinese prices would not be competitive in the first place. So I don't think it's proof that profit is the motivation for...
My dude, they have a sewer oil problem in China. Because people are so heavily motivated by profit to skim the cost of cooking materials, they are sending people illegally into the gutter with nets to skim off lipids from sewer water under the street.
Or China's, it's ultimately not the motivation for the way its economy works. I mean, profit itself, and this is rather explicit, as a form of measurement, is subordinated to the wider goal as far as the Chinese were concerned. First, to acquire Western technology, which they've succeeded in, and now to basically establish a global economic counter-hegemony to the American world system. And part of that is the competitive prices, right? Establishing a manufacturing and industrial base where the Chinese are actually selling their own brands and selling their own...
Okay, let's look at workers' rights in China right now. Workers' rights in China in 2022. We're going to ignore the migrant labor, of course, because they don't have any. Let's see here. This looks sort of professional. All right. So, In late November 2021, parental leave extensions were adopted in Chinese cities and provinces to stimulate the three-child policy. Extended leave policies aim to reduce the burden of childbirth and childcare. The extended number of days varies from province to province or city to city. For example, in Shanghai, get off my screen. Get off my screen. Thank you. Maternity leave is extended to 158 days. Good, very good. It's just the company should conduct an employee consultation process. Nice. Okay, that's great. Wait, is this just... Is this just on this? This is just on maternity leave. Okay, that's no good. Hang on. It's also a garbage site. Here we go. This is what we want. Boom, boom. Good, okay. Convention number 29 of the Fundamental Conventions on Forced Labor prohibits the use of forced labor in all its forms and requires state parties to make forced labor practices punishable as a penal offense. This instrument was supplemented by Convention number 105, which calls for the immediate abolition of compulsory labor as a means of political coercion or education or punishment for the expression of political views, mobilizing and using labor forces for purposes of economic development, labor discipline, punishment for participation in strikes, and racial, social, national, or religious discrimination. According to the latest global estimates, there are still about 25 million people globally who are forced to work under threat of coercion. Moreover, threat or coercion, rather. Moreover, many workers who are particularly hard hit by the economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic have become more vulnerable to being trapped in forced labor. In depositing the instrument of ratification, HE Mr. Chen Zhu, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of the People's Republic of China to the United Nations Office at Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland, stated, quote, "It is my great honor to deposit the instruments of ratification of Convention number 29 and Convention number 105 to the International Labor Office on behalf of the government of China based on the people-centered philosophy of development. China attaches high importance to protect workers' rights and interests. We adopt a positive, earnest, and responsible attitude toward ratifying international labor conventions. Those ratified earlier have all been effectively implemented. This April, the 34th session of the Standing Committee of the 13th National People's Congress has decided to ratify two ILO conventions, namely the Forced Labor Convention 1930 and the Abolition of Forced Labor Convention 1957. Consistently opposes forced labor. By completing the ratification of the two conventions of its own accord, the government of China has once again made clear its resolute position on fighting against forced labor." Okay, now get this. Oh, hang on. Google's being troublesome again. This is from July. This is what I was looking for. Large Chinese bank protests put down with violence. Video from clash in central Chinese city spreads online despite censorship. Officials have prevented earlier protests using COVID-19 health codes. Hundreds of bank customers demonstrating over frozen deposits were attacked by men in plainclothes in the central Chinese city of Shangzhou, marking a violent end to one of China's largest public protests in recent years. Images of the clash, which is widely videotaped, spread quickly enough on Chinese social media to outrun the country's army of internet censors, sparking a wave of online criticism. Video footage verified by the Wall Street Journal of protesters who were present on Sunday showed large numbers of unidentified men, many of them dressed in white t-shirts, barreling into peaceful crowds demonstrating on the steps of the local branch of China's central bank. The clash resulted in several injuries, according to the protesters, who said they were themselves beaten by the men in plain clothes. The Zhengzhou government didn't respond to requests for comments. It was the second protest launched by customers of four Zhengzhou banks after the lenders froze their accounts amid a government investigation into financial misconduct. The first smaller protest occurred in May and ended with a similar clash. Then there was another one. Strike. Access this one. This would actually be good. Okay, well, this is on JSTOR. I'm going to see if I can't get a hold of the full version of this document quickly. I get a full version of this paper, please. But I'll bring it up on the thing anyways. God, Google is just awful right now. I used to be able to pull up this stuff like in seconds. Here we go. Yeah, there were some sources on the violent put-down of migrant labor strikes that I'm trying to find, and I'll have to go through my documents because I have them saved somewhere from my previous hard drive. Because I did papers on this a while ago. Oh, here we go. Chinese politics. Maybe I got it here. No, that's not that one. Do I really not have anything on this to hand? Damn, that's annoying. Anyways, point is, it's not all sunshine and roses.
Products, not just manufacturing things for Western brands and Western products. So in that stage, which was stage one, that was just to acquire the Western technology and means of production. Stage two, where Chinese brands are now going to be predominant, fulfills...
We got it. We got them, boys. Okay, here we go. Let me minimize myself. So in contrast to the workers who organize strikes in the West, Chinese workers lack support from official unions and have to rely on informal ways to strike. The previous literature suggests that worker leaders have played a role in initiating wildcat strikes, and the engagement of labor NGOs has also facilitated grassroots activism. The focus of previous studies has been on the emergence, approaches, and strategies of the actors involved in different labor protests. However, we still know little about the direct or unintended consequences of the numerous strikes in South China. Based on fieldwork in the Pearl River Delta, this article explores how the informal strike organization built by workers, namely the worker representative mechanism, contributes to favorable outcomes for labor. By conducting a comparative case study, this article identifies two main factors that have impacted strike outcomes: how this mechanism builds up a wider representation when the union is absent, and how it sustains its core leadership for successive strikes and accomplishment of strike goals. By examining how workers build a representative mechanism that in practice acts as an informal strike organization, this article illustrates an alternative pattern of organization in strikes that bypasses trade unions and discusses its influences on emerging Chinese labor activism. The past 2 decades have witnessed many substantial strikes initiated by migrant workers in southern China. Compared with their counterparts in Western countries, Chinese workers are less likely to rely on trade unions to organize strikes and to carry out collective bargaining. Though they lack effective institutional support, Chinese migrant workers are capable of acting independently to stage forceful collective actions, bypassing the official unions. In the existing literature on the Chinese labor movement, scholars have thoroughly examined institutional settings from the official trade union embedded in the authoritarian regime to the enforcement of labor laws, policies, and dispute resolution system. The individual level working conditions, labor processes, and everyday grassroots resistance have also been placed under the academic spotlight. More recently, scholars have examined the role of labor NGOs. The focus of these studies has been the emergence, evolution, approaches, and strategies of different actors involved in the strikes, but scant attention has been paid to the consequences of labor protests. This is not only because Chinese industrial workers do not have a strong labor union to form an organized labor movement, but also due to the lack of beneficial outcomes that result from this kind of investigation. Therefore, the analysis of labor movement outcomes has been largely ignored by researchers up to this point. In short, they're not. It doesn't go very well. Evidence from my fieldwork in the Pearl River Delta region between 2013 and 2015 shows that recent strikes and protests are no longer spontaneous, but ones that striking workers have initiated with a more or less formalized organizational structure. This article explores how even in the absence of official unions, Chinese workers are able to achieve success in an informal way by building their own strike organizations. Labor movements and their outcomes. In the existing literature, few studies have explored. The main reason for this neglect is that China's labor protests are not largely organized by trade unions, and other type of independent labor organizations are forbidden. Western experience shows that it is largely the trade unions that have shaped industrial relations for the organization of effective strikes. In China, however, it is generally accepted that official trade unions are unresponsive to labor disputes and thus are not considered to represent workers. It is not surprising that labor scholars hold a generally pessimistic perspective on the emerging Chinese labor movement. Indeed, the lack of freedom to unionize has constrained the capacity of workers' associational power. Scholars have identified two alternative methods used by Chinese workers for mobilization in the absence of an effective and powerful labor union to back their collective action. So basically what China's strategy has been to make official organs that imitate institutions in society that have the capacity, or that have organizational capacity. And this includes not just like labor units, but also churches, things like that. This is one of the reasons why house churches are such a big deal. It's not because China's scared of people becoming Christian. It's they're scared of people organizing and forming bonds that allow them to demonstrate and engage in collective action on a broad scale that they can't stamp down effectively. And churches historically have been like a major source of fomenting dissent of various kinds, right? So what they'll do is they'll have official churches that you're allowed to be a part of, and then informal churches you're not allowed to be a part of. They'll have official unions that you're allowed to be a part of, but you're not allowed to be a part of unions that are not ratified by the government, which means effectively that all of the organizations that you would use to agitate against the government are owned by the government. So like the notion that China is communist is absurd on its face. It is not a worker ruled society at all. That's comical. I mean, case in point, like even the issue in Xinjiang with the Uyghur Muslims. These were people who were taken out of their homes and put into work camps. They didn't have rights. These aren't workers governing themselves. This is a capitalist state apparatus, just moving around people like cogs in a machine.
The basic purpose of establishing, a global economic order that has as its base real a real economy rather than, the financial capital that is now in command and now prevails. As far as, China's motivations for being so industrially competitive, I mean, China wants a prosperous economy. It wants an economy that grows. It wants jobs for its people. China also recognizes how that can be a problem for others, which is why it's so committed to establishing win-win cooperation with other states so that they could prop themselves up and, China's actually not a protectionist power. It actually wants a new form of free trade in which countries can establish their own industries and, themselves become competitive in other areas. So China believes there's a possibility for some kind of harmonious global economic integration, that is positioned against the hegemonic world system we now find ourselves in.
Okay, so it wants to grow an harmonious economic system, but wouldn't let's just go with that. Having free trade and having harmonious relationships, isn't that capitalism, sort of good capitalism?
No, I don't think it is. Yeah, it's not necessarily. See, free trade is just a phrase. I'm not really. There's obviously no unconditionally free trade, but it's more an attempt to have a global economy where states.
Okay, we get the idea. This is boring. I need to sleep because we've got talk tomorrow, so I'm gonna call it here. We'll have stuff to talk about, fortunately. As usual, Midnight Oil streams are unlisted. They can be found in the playlist just because they're sort of scattered and off the cuff. And I'm usually quite sleepy when I do them. The debate from earlier today will be put up. And on probably, I'm guessing on Thursday in all likelihood. I have to edit it down and put it up when I'm not going to be streaming for most of the day. So, that's that. Thanks everybody for joining me, and have a good night. Take care.